The race for governor is brought to you by AARP Hawaii. Be the difference. Vote.
AARP Hawaii and KHON2, your local election headquarters, present The Race for Governor.
Aloha, I'm Barbara Kim Stanton, State Director of AARP Hawaii. Americans over the age of 50 are the most powerful voting bloc in Hawaii, and in fact the nation. We will be the difference in every race in this year's elections. For more than 32 years, AARP has worked to make sure that candidates address issues important to voters. During tonight's debate, featuring the top 2 Democratic candidates for governor, we will ask them about issues that are important to our kupuna and their families. Improving financial security, affordable health care, help for caregivers, and creating more livable communities. AARP is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates, nor do we contribute money to political action committees or campaigns. On behalf of AARP and our nearly 150,000 members in Hawaii, thank you for joining us for tonight's debate. Now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Gina Mangieri.
Thank you, Barbara, and good evening. The format for tonight's debate has been developed by AARP. Each candidate will have 1 minute for opening remarks. Our panelist, Gerald Cotto, will alternate questions between the candidates, who will have 1 minute each to answer each question. If a follow-up question is posed, the candidate's response will be limited to another 30 seconds. There will also be 2 opportunities for the candidates to question each other. The candidate asking the question has the option to do a rebuttal, not to exceed 30 seconds. I will be presenting the questions from the viewers in between rounds of AARP and candidate-to-candidate questions. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing remarks. I will be ensuring that timekeeping is strictly adhered to. A yellow light visible to both candidates in the studio will flash at the 15-second mark, and a red light will flash when the expired time is up, at which point the candidate will be permitted to finish his or her sentence. Many of the questions for tonight's debate were developed by AARP, and they were held in confidence. Some questions were also asked by KHON2 by the general public. And our panelist tonight is Professor Gerald Cotto from the University of Hawaii, who formerly covered the Capitol Beat as a reporter. It's my pleasure now to introduce the candidates, Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa and Governor David Ige. Candidates, good evening. And welcome.
Evening, aloha.
The order for tonight's forum has been decided in advance by a coin flip, and Congresswoman Hanabusa will give her opening remarks first. Congresswoman, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. A society is defined by how we treasure our kupuna and our youth. We are entering a stage now where the baby boomers are aging, and the millennial generation is growing to the point that they may just exceed the baby boomers. So what we really do need is to hear their voices and to listen to them. That is why, as I travel throughout the state, I decided what is necessary is an elevation to the cabinet level position of representatives of both the seniors, our kupuna, and the millennials. Because as we plan for their futures, we must understand how they perceive their futures and what they want. Government for too long has just simply dictated, and that is not what we want, and that is what we cannot continue to do. This is why I will make sure that they're never left behind again, and they will have a say in how government proceeds.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Governor.
Aloha. I just wanted to start by thanking AARP Hawaii for really giving the voters of Hawaii this opportunity to see the Democratic governor candidates side by side. You know, 4 years ago, I decided to run for governor because I felt too many decisions favored special interests and self-interest rather than the public interest. I pledged to be governor for all of Hawaii. Real leadership is about engaging the community, working to find the best solutions, and then getting it implemented. I have a record of accomplishments, unlike any other candidate in this race. I promised to cool 1,000 classrooms, and we're at 1,300 classrooms and counting. We have focused on homelessness, and for the past 2 years, the homeless count all across the state has decreased. I am committed to carrying out the public interest in every decision. It really is about doing the right things in the right way for the right reasons.
Thank you, Governor. And let's get to our questions tonight. Gerald Cotto has question number 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Ige and Congresswoman Hanabusa, for participating tonight. The first question is to Congresswoman Hanabusa. What will be the biggest impact on people 50 plus under a Hanabusa administration?
I wanted to make it very clear, and that's why I put it in my opening. The biggest impact would be truly a say. I will make happen a cabinet-level position because I believe that the issues that the Kapunas are facing are no different than what I know we're going through. And the reason is I was raised by grandparents, and we've always had a multi-generational home. What you see now is that's becoming more and more common. Cost of senior care is rising. We need to make sure that we address all of that. Most importantly, however, the Kapuna want to age in place, and that's very important. So you see that as a major component. And in addition to that, the one thing I want to make very sure is that the Kapunas are not beginning to feel safe in the streets. We have to address that. We have to make this an age-friendly city, which is really one of the mandates of AARP.
Governor Ige.
And for Governor Ige, the same question. What will be the biggest impact on people 50 plus under an Ige administration?
Absolutely. We're committed to delivering on your priorities as I've walked and talked all across the state. It is about building homes for our community. We have completed 5,300 homes, and our goal is 10,000 homes by 2020. I know that you want the opportunities for your children to come back to Hawaii, and constructing homes is first and foremost what I heard all around the state. Second is really about a vibrant economy. It really is continuing our momentum to create jobs of the future. It's about cybersecurity. It's about creating jobs and entrepreneurship. It's about investment and venture capital to really create the opportunities and build businesses that creates the jobs that our children and our children's children would want to pursue.
Thank you.
The next question is for Governor Ige. Hawaii faces a significant long-term funding shortfall for health care and pension commitments to its government workers. What will you do to see that the pension and health care commitments of retirees are met?
I am committed as a priority to keep our promises to our public servants. I have reformed the pension system by increasing the age for new hires that they can retire, increasing the contribution that new workers make, reducing the benefits, and stopping pension spiking. I have taken action to ensure that our pension system is sustainable over the long term. And most importantly, I committed and wrote the law to pre-fund the health fund benefit. We will be making the first 100% contribution to the health fund to ensure that our promises are kept.
Thank you. And we'll add about another 10 seconds for Congresswoman's response.
Thank you. Pension and health care are the two most important issues for our public employees. But it is even a greater issue when they become to the retirement age. And that's why we must make sure that the pension system, ERS, is viable. The problem that the governor has is he takes credit for things that others have done. We know Wes Machida in 2012 led the way when he was the chair, or he was executive director of ERS, and he's now back there. Health Fund is also something that we must consider and take a hold of. And one of the reasons that we do it is that because we know that that is something that when you are older and you're retiring, you need to feel secure, and healthcare costs is always a major concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Congresswoman Hanabusa. Hawaii's long-term care costs are among the highest in the nation. The Genworth long-term care study says the median cost of a semi-private room in a nursing home is $137,240 a year, and having a health aid costs $59,488 a year. Many are afraid they cannot afford the cost of a nursing home, and neither are they confident they can afford the cost of care at home. What will you do to help Hawaii's kupuna and their families pay for long-term care?
You know, long-term care has been an issue that has faced this state for a very long time. Beginning, I think it was Jeanette Takamura who did the first program proposals under Governor Waihee. I know this firsthand because I have a mother who is aging in place, and it is not a simple situation. What we need to do is we need to make it as viable and as livable as possible for them. One of the things that I'd like to point out is the AARP took initiative in 2017 to get kupuna caregivers. That was funded at $600,000 initially because that's what AARP said we needed to kick it off. However, in the subsequent year where AARP says we need about $6 million, the Ige administration funded it at $600,000. There are 236,000 seniors. At $600,000, it is $2.65 per senior.
Governor Ige, same question.
Certainly. You know, we know that the challenge of long-term care is about aging in place. You know, we have changed the programs to support families taking care of their loved ones in home. You know, we have funded kupuna care, which is focused on supporting families by providing respite services, home health care, home chore services, to really support the family in taking care of their loved ones in the home. And we created the Aging Disability Resource Centers so that in each and every county all across the state, we have one-stop shop to help families sort through the challenges and options that they have for taking care of their loved ones. And I am proud to be governor of the first state in the country for kupuna caregivers, where we have 2 adults working. They can get $70 per day to support them in taking care of their kupuna in their home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Next question is for Governor Ige. Tourism has been essential to Hawaii, but the increasing number of tourists here is straining our resources and carrying capacity of the islands. Where do you see the balance between the rapid growth of tourism and maintaining the quality of life for local residents? Do you think we can continue increasing both the visitor count and the population at the rate we're going?
No, I do believe that it is about managing tourism now and really being focused on distributing the visitors to each and every neighbor island and county so that each island can benefit from the activity. And I think more importantly, the infrastructure is in better position to support them. It is about finding balance, and I've supported and committed to using TAT dollars to invest in beaches and ocean safety. You know, we know that the infrastructure, the beaches, the natural beauty that brings the visitors to the island can be supported by the tourist tax. You know, and I also preserved Turtle Bay, the largest oceanfront property left pristine so that our community and the visitors could benefit from that beach access. So it really is about balance, about investing in infrastructure to support the visitors and residents alike.
Congresswoman Hanabusa, the same question.
Thank you. But before I get to that question, I don't want the kupunas to be confused. $70 a day for one person, $600,000 maybe provides 90 people. That's it. So you really need to step it up. And as a governor, I want to step it up because I do believe that aging in place is critical. And like I said, this is something AARP and the legislature was their initiative. Tourism is our major industry. However, in order for us to continue to really benefit from it, we have to ensure that the natural resources, the beauty of Hawaii, which brings them here, is something that we do not abuse and we take care of. That is why the whole concept of Sustainability 2050, which was a program that I spearheaded in 2008 when I was Senate President, was so critical because we need to ask the critical issues. What is the carrying capacity of Hawaii, of our beautiful state, so it can continue to do so?
Thank you. Next question for Congresswoman Hanabusa. This is a fairly likely question, so bear with me. A livable community is one that is safe and secure, has housing that is affordable, no more than 30% of the income is spent on housing, transportation options, and offers supportive community features and services for people of all ages and allows people to remain in their communities as they age. Transit-oriented developments can be developed with features that provide these benefits to Hawaii's kupuna. What is your vision for transit-oriented developments in Hawaii? And specifically, what steps would you take to ensure that Honolulu's rail project will create transit-oriented development that's more income equitable and intergenerational?
That is a long question,
That
Gerald.
is. It was a mouthful.
Let me begin with this. First of all, transit-oriented development is something that I have always believed in. And that is why in the time that I'm in Congress, I actually bought a unit in a TOD so that I can really understand how it's done properly. And in Washington, D.C., they do it right. I'm 1 block away from the rail station, and we have a whole Potomac River, so they call it the wharf development, and it is done exactly like how we would like to see it done. The issue for HART, or the issue for the rail project in Hawaii, is the fact that the land is not owned by the city and county of Honolulu, and though they try to maintain control over TODs. What we need to do is truly work together, and the state has to play, because the land is the state's. The state is the only entity that can keep the cost of housing down and to develop like kupuna complexes, because the land is there for them.
Governor Ige?
Yes, thank you. I did create a transit-oriented development specialist in the Office of State Planning exactly for this purpose. It really is the fact that the state owns much of the parcels along the transit route. So we've identified and brought all agencies and all departments together to put the lands that they control on the table. We do have a process to engage the entire community to identify those projects that make the most sense along the transitway, whether it be senior housing, whether it be affordable housing. One of the prime stops is Aloha Stadium and what happens with the stadium, and entertainment and other opportunities to really allow public-private partnerships to deliver on the promise of transit-oriented development. Yes, we want to have the full range of access to services so that our communities can live, work, and play along the transit route.
Thank you. Now that wraps up the first set of AARP questions, and we're going to move on now to one of two portions of the debate where the candidates will get to ask each other a question. No longer than 30 seconds to ask. Governor Ige, you have the first question. Congresswoman, you will have 60 seconds to respond, and then Governor 30 seconds to rebut if you choose. Governor Ige, your question.
Thank you. As governor, I've been able to cool 1,300 classrooms, engage the community to develop a new blueprint for public education, delivered high school students to be able to take college credits for free. Colleen, what have you done to improve education for Hawaii students?
Thank you, David. First of all, on your 1,300 classrooms that you claim to have cooled, let's be clear as to the funding. You originally started it with GEMS, so you have to give credit where credit is due, which you have a habit of not doing, and that is the legislature funded the $100 million to make it work. As to education, for the time that I was in the state legislature, David, everyone knows the one thing that I have been an advocate for was, for example, Sea Rider production out in Waianae. And as a result, you have students who are graduating 100% and 100% acceptance into college level institutions. In addition, the other thing is I was very critical in the development of the charter school, especially that which is out in Nanakuli called Kavaihona. Everyone knows it's probably the best example of a charter school in the state of Hawaii, and it works very well. And that is something that I'm proud to say I was a part of. You talk about cooling classrooms. I did my Ili Elementary, which was between pigs and chickens.
Thank you, and I'm just proud of the fact that we cooled virtually every classroom in the west side, Nanakuli, Waianae, as well as all of the schools, Campbell High School. So certainly the funding is something that I was glad to work with the legislature to find the best way to do it. If I did not initiate it, it would not have happened. You know, and I'm glad and ready to put forward my record for the accomplishments, being able to deliver and ensure that every public high school has the opportunity to earn college credits.
Thank you. Congresswoman, your question for the governor.
David, real leadership does not wait for 38 minutes. You keep saying that the false missile alert was caused by human error by a single individual. A real leader would not pass the buck. The true cause was a systemic failure of leadership by your administration. You had no plan to begin with, and you didn't know when something went wrong. Will you finally take personal responsibility for the missile fiasco? And we're still waiting to know why it took 38 minutes.
Certainly, I was doing my job. We have been open and transparent in providing the details in an independent assessment that presented the facts. Yes, I contacted Hawaii Emergency Management to confirm whether the alert was real or not. General Logan provided me the confirmation that it was not, directed staff to inform the public. Radio stations were contacted immediately, followed by the television stations. Within 15 minutes, all of media was fully aware that it was a false missile alert. And yes, it did take 38 minutes because there was no automated way to be able to issue the text messages to everyone. But the focus is that we've made the changes to assure that this will never happen again. We have new leadership at HAEMA who has transformed the organization in a way that assures the health and safety of the public.
Your rebuttal, if you wish.
David, you failed in the singular test of leadership, and this is all we need to know. In a time of crisis, when it really mattered, David Ige blinked and had no clue. It doesn't say much to everyone that you claim all these things. 38 minutes, people were calling loved ones, saying goodbye, putting children in manholes. That's what people were going along with. You know, we've asked you for your records, too, as to who you called, because we need to know where we matter.
Thank you. We're now going to ask the candidates some questions sent in from our viewers, and the first is a video question from Robert Taylor. Congresswoman Hanabusa, you'll be the first to answer. Here's Robert's question.
What are we doing to create more social programs or organizations in order to help the homeless issue in Hawaii? We have one of the worst homelessness per capita in the whole entire nation. So what type of programs or solutions would the new governor like to implement in order to help resolve this crisis that we have?
He asked, what are we doing to create more social programs or organizations in order to help the homeless issue in Hawaii?
I think that the first thing that I'd like Robert to understand is that the homeless issue is a complex issue. It has many gamuts to it. What is first of all important is that we recognize that the solution is not one size fit all. It just doesn't work that way. We have Ohana zones that were passed this past legislative session. We have issues regarding how to take care of those who people call are chronically homeless. We also have issues on how to make sure that the families, which everyone is concerned about, are taken off the streets. And those types of programs, a lot of it is being shared with private-public partnerships as to how it's being done, because they tend to do it better than government has done it. But I think most importantly, What we haven't talked about that is necessary to talk about is our kupuna. They are having a difficulty now because they do not feel safe. They have to be able to access bus stops, and they can't get on sidewalks. These are the challenges that we also have to face.
Thank you. And we'll add a bit of time to the governor's response to that same question. What social programs and organizations will you put in place to help the homeless in Hawaii?
You know, we have seen for the first time in many years a decrease in the statewide count of homelessness for the second year in a row. It is down almost more than 18% in the last 2 years. Our programs are working. It is a combination of getting federal, state, and county with the private sector working together in the best practices and those programs that work. Housing first, and our focus in placing homeless individuals into permanent supportive housing is proven to work time and time again. I'm proud of our work with the County of Honolulu, where we had Hale Maoli Ola, a joint venture on state land with a transition center that the county runs. We have consistently been able to help more than 80 people on that property transition to permanent housing within 6 months. It really is about those kinds of programs that move people from homelessness into permanent supportive housing that will help us defeat homelessness statewide.
Thank you. Our second viewer question. The federal government is facing a huge deficit and threatening to cut funding for programs such as Medicaid and SNAP, or what's commonly known as food stamps. What are you prepared to do if benefits and the safety net programs are cut by the federal government? Governor Ige.
Certainly, we are focused on monitoring activity at the federal level. You know, we have a task force of all the agencies that receive funding from the federal government, being in contact with the agencies to make sure that we understand what cuts are coming down the road. We are prioritizing those programs that are most important to our community, like food stamps and other programs. So we are prepared to take action should the federal government cut those programs. You know, we obviously, it would depend on the size of the cuts and how we would proceed. But as you know, we in Hawaii have always been committed to helping those who are least fortunate and cannot help themselves. You know, we will be committed to step forward once again, should the federal government cut the budget, to provide the most important programs that our community needs.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
You know, this is one area where having had my political journey comes into a real benefit for the people of the state of Hawaii. I do know how the federal government works. I also do know how the laws are passed and what will eventually become law. I believe that in SNAP, for example, we have managed to keep SNAP funded. We have managed to keep issues like CHIP, which is Children Health Fund, and funding for what we call the federally qualified health systems for the kapunas use a lot of. We have managed to keep that all there. It is because of the fact that we need the good relationships in Washington, and we need to be there to be able to lobby people that we know. And I happen to know many of them. So I believe that this is something that we can affirmatively fight in the beginning because of my experience and because of all the relationships that I have in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Our next viewer question. Would you support future state tax increases to fund rail construction or operations? Congresswoman Hanabusa, you're up first.
I have been very clear on this, that I do not support an extension. And the reason why is because, as the former chair of HART, I do understand how the construction costs have gone out of hand, and they have not done a good job. You cannot continue to expect the people of the city and county of Honolulu and the rest of the state to pay for this burden. The city and county and HART has to be accountable, and they have failed to do that. So there is no reason why we should encourage that behavior by enabling them, by giving them, for example, a permanent extension or indefinite extension, which I believe David had actually supported in one of our debates. That is not right, any more than it was right to support the mayor's request that we do a 10-year extension on the GET, which would have left us a surplus of over $2 billion. How do we explain that to our kupuna and the rest of the people, that that's what we would propose?
Thank you. Governor.
Certainly, I do believe that we need to finish the rail project all the way to Ala Moana. You know, I would like to note that Colleen left her position as chairman of the board of HART exactly when the project cost exploded and really did not take any action to contain the cost of the project while she was serving on the HART board. You know, we need to keep the county accountable and the HART people accountable to the cost. I have supported increasing public-private partnerships in the program. Every single transit system that I visited and experienced benefited from private sector investments in the rail stations in ways that really improve the overall livableness of the project. And I think most importantly, it can make a significant investment to manage the cost and reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Thank you very much. Well, we're about halfway through our debate already, so we'll take a short break now and be back soon with more questions from AARP, our viewers, and the candidates.
Critical issues involving kupuna, family caregivers, and financial security are on the line in this election. The next governor and legislature will make decisions on the Kupuna Caregiver Program. The program helps working family caregivers with services so they can stay in the workforce. There's also a proposal to help 216,000 workers in Hawaii prepare for their own future with a simple way to save for retirement through payroll deduction. Let's learn a little bit more about these issues.
My name is Iris Yafuso Toguchi, and we gave up our family business, Larry's Bakery, to care for my mom. Since we've closed the business, I did have to go back to work. Finances was a little tough. My other choice would have been a care home, which I, of course, don't want to do that, and that would have cost the state more money because we would have gone for Medicaid. The reward is just seeing my mom smile every day and be home with us where we want her to be. Please continue Kupuna Caregiver Program. It's the best thing that has happened to a lot of us, and if you want to be the best governor, you would do it.
I'm Elizabeth Watanabe, and I am a small business owner here in Honolulu, Hawaii. So retirement savings should be simple, but it's actually something so complicated. And although that retirement savings is something that we as small businesses would like to do, it's almost impossible for us to take on another burden and another expense. Other states have implemented programs that have been proven to be successful. I think we need to implement that here too for our employees. I think that our next governor needs to help small businesses and employees save so that they can be better prepared for retirement.
Every vote counts. Be the difference, stay informed, and take the AARP pledge to vote by going to aarp.org/vote. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to the governor's race, a debate between Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa and Governor David Ige. Let's start the second half of our debate with more questions from AARP. Governor Ige will be first to respond, and our panelist, Gerald Kato, has the first question.
Governor Ige, Hawaii was the first in the nation to help working family caregivers through a program called Kupuna Care. This program provides services like adult daycare to help family caregivers stay in the workforce. The program will need to be funded again next year. Do you support Kupuna Caregiver to help working caregivers stay in the workforce? Why or why not?
Certainly, I do support Kupuna Caregivers program, and I was proud to be the first governor to sign the program. As we know, Hawaii was the first state in the nation committed to helping families where both spouses continue to work in the job market. It's very important. Every day that we can help a family take care of their loved ones at home saves us the long-term cost of long-term care. So yes, I'm committed to supporting that program. As you know, we're running a pilot. We had funds made available, and the challenge and the opportunity is how do we evaluate, create priorities for those families where they both are working, and what kinds of help do they need to continue to work and be in the workforce and take care of their loved ones at the same time. Clearly, this is brand new ground. I'm committed to making the program work.
Congressman Hanabusa?
You know, this is the initiative of AARP, and they should be congratulated for it, and the legislature for initially funding it for $600,000 in 2017. However, when it comes down to what does that represent, we do know that at $70 a day, it represents about 90 individuals. The question is, what is the need? You know, we have 236,000 seniors in this state. What is the need? I believe that AARP calculated that to do about 900 families, they would need $6 million. So this discussion has already begun. What you really need is a governor who can work with the legislature, who the legislature will respect and have credibility with, and to push these programs for the Kupunas. We do know that Governor Ige has difficulty with the legislature because he tends to take credit for too much of their work. And I believe that I'm the person who can best effect these programs.
Congressman Hanabusa?
Yes.
Paid family leave is another issue that will be before the next governor. Would you support a family leave law that provides paid leave to employees who have to take time off for family caregiving purposes? And if so, how would you propose to pay for it? For instance, should it be paid for by employers, by workers, by taxpayers, or is there some other financial option you'd propose?
Thank you, Gerald. As many of you know, I'm a labor lawyer in my real life. And so one of the issues such as paid family leave and how we pay for it, for employers that have collective bargaining relationships, that is a subject of collective bargaining. But the real issue now is for employers who are not covered by unions. The first place that we must begin is in the state. The state is the biggest employer, and what we need to do is set that priority and make it very clear and lead the way. As governor, I would be someone who would advocate for that, make sure that it's part of the collective bargaining process, and be sure that it is paid. Whether or not we come up with a system that has paid family leaves, TDI, and all these various other benefits that people are entitled to, put together, and it's a group of benefits, that's something that needs that discussion. But with my experience, I'm probably the best person who can navigate through that process.
Governor Ige?
Yes, certainly. We are creating a task force. I'll be appointing the members on that task force to really reach out, include business, all stakeholders, labor unions, members of the public as well. This is a community conversation. There are many options on how to fund a paid family leave program, and this task force will be coming up examining what the different models of paid family leave, whether it be employer-sponsored and paid for, whether it be a cost to the employee, or a combination of both. This definitely changes our community, and it needs to be a community conversation with all parties and all stakeholders participating so that we can, as a community, decide what are the benefits that are necessary and how best to pay for paid family leave that would support our families in supporting their families.
Next question is for Governor Ige. Many small businesses who want to set up a payroll deduction plan to help employees save for retirement find it too difficult and costly. Yet research shows that workers are 15 times more likely to save by having payroll savings plans. Currently, Hawaii has 216,000 workers unable to save at work through payroll deduction. Many states have already set up payroll deduction programs for workers similar to the College 529 plans. Would you support and help start a payroll deduction savings program for these workers?
I absolutely would start payroll deduction service. You know, when I started working at Hawaiian Telephone right out of college, the first thing I did was to participate in the company's payroll savings program because I knew that it would be the best way for me to be able to save money to buy a home and ultimately be able to afford to send my kids to college. So I think it's an excellent idea. I just wanted to thank AARP. I know that I talked with them last session when they talked about the need in our community with more than 200,000 people without access to a program like this. You know, I have always believed in the best ideas coming forward and being able to support it. This is another one of those ideas. I'm thankful that AARP had able to surface, and I wholeheartedly support it. I understand the importance of payroll savings in building nest eggs for our families.
Congresswoman Hanabusa?
I think the concept of savings is something that we should start in the elementary schools. I remember as a kid bringing in my little brown book with 25 cents or 50 cents and being very proud at the end to see it grow to some amount that I may be able to buy someone a present. So yes, but we have to start early. It is something that we have to begin to ingrain. Being in Congress, the one thing that's very interesting is we do have a thrift saving plan there, which is matched between government as well as your contribution. I think what we need to talk about here is how do we incentivize people to save? And that's probably one way of doing it. And if you give employers a deduction for the amounts that they may contribute, it's also some way that we can ensure their futures and the fact that people are saving. It's a great plan, but I like going back to the elementary school days too with my little brown book.
Okay, the next question is, we'll start with Congresswoman Hanabusa, and this is a toughie.
Okay.
Only one of you can be elected governor in November. You're both accomplished leaders, and it would be a shame to have your talents go to waste. Given that, what position in your administration would you consider nominating or appointing your opponent to?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I think that it is a waste to have the talents lost, and given my experience, I served the whole time I was in the Senate. David was also there. David was always interested in the tech industry, whether it was movies or Act 221 was something that he created, and I think he was one of the major ones on that, though that program didn't do as much as we had hoped. I think that if I were governor, I would approach David and say, you know, David, it's time to look at really doing something affirmative with the tech industry again. And I think that your skill sets would be perfect for that. And I would tap him if he would consider to do that. That's where I think that his talents are really best served and for the best interest of the state of Hawaii.
Governor Ige, the same question for you.
Certainly, you know, Colleen is an excellent lawyer, and she has been in a wide variety of areas. And so clearly, you know, there are a lot of important positions that require a lawyer. It could be Attorney General. Certainly that would be one place, and I know that she's been very active in pursuing lawsuits. You know, Director of the Department of Labor, again, is another area that she has specific expertise in. You know, I've been beaten up by the legislature about Chief Negotiator, and, you know, obviously all of the contracts will be coming up again, and having someone to be a Chief Negotiator to be able to negotiate with all the labor unions to arrive at important decisions. And we've talked a little bit about it. I mean, we're talking about paid family leave and a number of other programs that we have important work to be done. And clearly, I think her skills as an attorney and a legislator would be helpful.
Thank you. Well, we have one more round of questions from the candidates to each other. Congresswoman Hanabusa poses the first question, no longer than 30 seconds to ask. Governor Ige, you'll have a minute to respond, and then Congresswoman, a 30-second rebuttal.
David, you know, one of the things that became very clear to me is that we have to talk about public safety. Your administration failed to protect public safety. Randall Saito, a murderer, simply walked out of the Hawaii State Hospital. It took 8 hours for your administration to alert law enforcement about this escape. By then, he'd caught a taxi to the airport, boarded 2 flights, and landed in California with clothes, cash, and fake ID. Why did it take 8 hours to say that a murderer has escaped?
Certainly, that episode exposed deficiencies in the state hospital. As you are very much aware, Colleen, the state hospital wasn't designed as a forensic facility. It was really designed for mental health, as a mental health hospital. And so it was not designed to contain people. Yes, the episode identified glaring weaknesses in the agency. Since that escape, we have totally audited the processes. We've implemented action. We've made sure that the employees receive training on the new protocols that would be required. And we constructed new fences to ensure that we have more and better physical facility of that property. And, you know, we continue to make improvements to ensure the health and safety of our community.
You know, there's a disturbing trend. Your failure of leadership puts lives in danger, whether it's 38 minutes or waiting 8 hours. This particular issue, however, we came out of a consent decree with the federal government on it before. Clayton He in 2014 actually did a study which brought it to light. And yet, 4 years later, nothing was done to address it. The mental hospital is not a new issue, and it's something that I would have thought that would have been front and center for your administration.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And Governor Ige, your question for Congresswoman.
You know, as governor, I've committed to 100% clean renewable energy. We've protected 40,000 acres of prime watershed. We've passed community-based subsistence fishing rules and streamlined permitting for restoration of traditional fish ponds. Colleen, what have you done to protect our environment, the environment of Hawaii?
You know, David, one of the interesting things about protecting the environment is that, you know, there are many things out there that need protecting. For example, one of the issues that I've been battling since 1999 is the closure of Waimanalo Gulch, which is the sanitary landfill. Now, what your administration has to account for is why is that landfill being allowed to operate without a permit? And it's been doing that for a while. You know that when the big rains came, it put all the different kinds of junk in the ocean, in beautiful ocean, got all the junk in, whether it was syringes and other things. That was something that we looked at. And that place got fined, no question, got fined. But it still is without a permit. So talk about pristine environments, talking about doing these things. Talk about what is fundamental, our trash, and protecting our people from that trash.
Certainly, I'm proud of my record in protecting our environment. The Sustainable Hawaii Initiative is a commitment to the future of Hawaii and being able to turn over an environment that we would want to leave to our children and our children's children. It really is about leadership, and I'm proud that the Sierra Club recognized my leadership and endorsed my candidacy for re-election.
Thank you. Let's get back to some viewer questions. Here's another video question. This one from Casey Nuesca. And Governor Ige, you will respond first.
What is affordable housing in Hawaii? And truly, what is affordable in Hawaii? Because from experience, I've applied to affordable housing and I was not even qualified for a loan there. So how can we make affordable housing in Hawaii affordable for the residents of Hawaii?
You know, I've set a goal of completing 10,000 new housing units in the state of Hawaii by 2020, and we are focused at the full spectrum of housing. The federal government defines housing, but we have a comprehensive program to develop housing at all price points. You know, we're committed to public-private partnerships for public housing, which really is focused at those from 0 to 30% of the area mean income. You know, we have low-income tax credits from HHFDC focused at affordable rentals, and we are committed and have developed thousands of affordable rental projects all across the state. And then we passed a new tax credit focused on housing from 80 to 140% of the area median income. I know that creating housing is what our community wants, and my administration has delivered on that promise at the full range of pricing points.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
You know, Tracy, affordable housing is not as depicted by the governor. He talks about 5,500 units or 10,000 units. Know that of the 55 units, 2,000 are affordable. In addition to that, what the governor has done with the housing units of the state is he sold them, just like he sold Kupuna housing. And then there's a deficit in the rental, it went up. So these are the things that show the true feelings of this governor when it comes to affordable housing. The one thing you should ask and you should look at is the fact that the one thing government has the ability to do, and in this case the state, is it can build Hawaiian homelands. And yet in the 4 years, though it was all ready to go, now you're seeing some sticks in the ground. Why is that a commitment to affordable housing? That is not. The failure to build on areas that you can build, that is not a commitment.
Thank you. One of our viewers wants to know, do you support the proposed $15 minimum wage? How do you think that kind of an increase would affect small businesses in Hawaii and those on fixed incomes? The question first goes to Congresswoman Hanabusa.
I have always been a supporter of the concept of a livable wage. And unfortunately for Hawaii, $15 may not be livable enough. But we have to start somewhere. And that's always the challenge in doing what would be a living wage for a particular area. For example, I believe DBEDT did a study, and it may be $12 in the Big Island, it may be $15 to $16 in Oahu, it may be higher for the island of Maui. So we need to come to grips first with what is it that people need. When we talk about a, quote, minimum wage, it's not a minimum wage. We have to talk about what is a livable wage. The question, as it focuses on its impact on small business and others, is a very valid question. And that is something that government must look at and must investigate as to how we're going to do it. Notwithstanding, what you can start with is your own employees. And know that this administration has about 2,000 employees who do not make $15 an hour.
Thank you. And we'll add a bit of time to your response, sir.
Certainly. I was chairperson of Ways and Means when we passed the last minimum wage increase that was phased in over 3 increments. The $15 minimum wage, again, would probably be phased in over a period of time. As you noted, it definitely would impact small businesses. At the same time, we would continue to exempt small businesses from the minimum wage requirement. We know that small businesses have less of the ability to pay for the increase in wages, and we want to be sensitive to that. You know, I do believe that we need to be committed to a minimum wage and a livable wage. There has been discussions, and I do support raising the minimum wage to $15 and then providing a cost of living adjustment each and every year so that it would move as wages in the general economy move.
Thank you both. Well, Hawaii is facing a teacher shortage, and it's reportedly getting worse and worse. At the same time, U.S. News and World Report ranks Hawaii 32nd among the 50 states in its pre-K to 12th grade rankings for the best states for education. What will you do to recruit more qualified teachers for the classrooms and at the same time raise the quality of public education? Governor Ige.
Certainly. You know, the teacher shortage is a priority of the Board of Education and the new Superintendent of Education. The shortage of hundreds of positions each and every year is unacceptable, and I think it focuses in a multi-pronged approach. First is about teacher training and education. We need to have more cohorts where the teachers are being trained in the communities that they serve. We've had satellite campuses in West Oahu, for example, and on the neighbor islands, where residents of the community can be taking courses to get certified as teachers, and we find that that's the best opportunity, that they are from the community, they want to return to the community. You know, we are also looking at various programs, teacher mentorship, because we know that many teachers feel like they're left alone, and we are looking at other kinds of incentive, shortage incentives, as well as teacher housing.
Thank you. A little time for you.
The issue of teacher shortage is not new. That is something that this administration has had to face with, and I'm sure David, as Ways and Means Chair, has had to deal with it. And the question is, why are we still here? The teachers want to be treated with respect and treated as professionals. And as professionals, we need, as a state, to make the commitment to their increased wages. We know what it's like. When we did the Felix Consent Decree, which I was the co-chair of, we were very clear that we couldn't recruit special needs teachers. And the only way we could do that was really with a commitment, and it really took the federal government, the federal courts, to say, you will pay a premium, you will pay moving expenses, you will do all these different things to ensure that we can get that population service. We may have to do something along those lines. I personally believe in teacher housing, especially for the rural areas. My teachers all lived in the cottages, and I believe it enhanced the education that I got.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the question portion of our debate. It's time for the candidates to give their final thoughts. Congresswoman Hanabusa, you'll be first, and you'll have 1 minute.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone, for being here. You have heard many numbers and claims in this debate. You have to ask yourself whether things are better now or not, and you know how you feel. I know that we do not want 4 more years of the same old, same old. That's, of course, 38 minutes, 8 hours, or the Veterans Center for Oahu, which took 2 years. They had 2 years and they didn't do anything. So they have to come to Congress and ask us to ensure an extension. Or Kupuna Housing. Why would you sell it and then have to go find the money to supplement that rent because it gets sold to somebody who raises the rent? I am running for governor because I believe you deserve better. We all do deserve better. I'm a person with the skills necessary to make sure that we get our share of everything. I humbly ask that after you heard today's debate, that you all agree with me that Hanabusa for governor is the best way for us to move forward.
Thank you. And Governor Ige, 1 minute and 5 seconds.
You know, this election really is about the future of Hawaii. And let's be very clear. Criticizing isn't leadership. Leadership is about engaging the public, working with stakeholders, finding the best solutions, and then implementing them in the best interest of the public. It's about forgetting special interest and self-interest. It really is about moving our community forward and getting those projects done that make the most sense. And let's get real. My accomplishments, we finished 5,300 new homes in our community. Homelessness is down for the 2nd consecutive year. We are taking real action. Hawaii leads the nation for 100% clean renewable energy and the first state to commit to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. Hawaii is leading the world in sustainability. I'm committed to doubling local food production. This election is about real leadership, and real leadership is about getting things done on your behalf. Aloha.
Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's debates. Thank you, candidates, for your participation, and thank you also to the AARP for sponsoring this debate and keeping Hawaii's people informed on issues vital to our state. People 50 and over in Hawaii are the most powerful voting bloc in the state, but only if you go out and vote. You can be the difference. Vote in both the primary and general election. Go to aarp.org/vote for more information. And we'll be posting this entire debate on our website, khon2.com. And stay with KHON2 on primary election night, August 11th, for complete results coverage starting with our 6 p.m. news and continuing through the deciding printouts. Mahalo to all of our viewers, and good night.